Hey guys, I'm Jeff Lemieux, and today I'm joined by Revolution midfielder Mark-Anthony Kaye for an incredibly important conversation, one that feels like it's happening more and more often, and that is a conversation about mental health and wellness, particularly with regards to the mental health of athletes. And Mac, first of all, I gotta say thanks for being here and being willing to have this conversation, because it does feel like when it comes to this issue that one of the biggest barriers can be just sitting down and having this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. So we're already beating the stigma by having this conversation right now, which is good. But yeah, it's an important talking point in sports, and I think it's definitely gaining traction. We can see it over the last 3 to 5 years. There's been more push for people to come out and speak about it, but we're still far away from where I think we want to and can be.
Yeah, mental health, obviously such an important topic and an important issue for everybody. And mental health issues can affect anybody of any age, any walk of life. But when you think about the unique stresses that come with being a professional athlete, which we're here to talk about today, what is it you think about being an athlete potentially contributes to issues with mental health?
I think the biggest thing is the pressure that athletes deal with on a day-to-day basis. You're in a job environment where you're constantly being judged on your performance, and that could have a huge amount of stress on your well-being. So as athletes go throughout their career, they can develop different ways of dealing with it, but I think athletes even at the highest level deal with it every day. So I think the biggest thing is just being able to have systems in place that are available for help if need be. But I think the biggest thing is just having guys like myself who aren't scared to talk about it, so that it becomes more of a regular thing.
I mean, you talk about the stresses of being an athlete, and I think people on the outside can think of, okay, well, there's that pressure to perform, there's the pressure to win, the pressure to make a national team, to perform to your country, all that stuff. But really on a daily basis, there is also that pressure to perform so as to keep your job. I mean, how heavy can that be?
Yeah, it's a lot. Like I again, there's 28 guys on a roster. Clubs are constantly looking for different ways to improve their team, whether that's bringing in players from different countries or different teams or through the academy system. So you're rarely in a position where you can feel like you're in a cushy situation and you can just breathe. And that's part of being an athlete. You enjoy that part of always competing, but yeah, it's an everyday stress that you feel like every decision you make is going to affect your performance, and that can end up weighing a lot on people's shoulders.
I know you have a unique situation as well, because each of the last 3 summers you have been traded. And I know we can say, well, look, this is part of being a professional athlete, and in a sense it is. But 3 straight summers, from LA to Colorado, Colorado to Toronto, Toronto to New England, you've been asked to pack up your life and move. How big of a strain can that be?
I think it's honestly the biggest, because it eventually ends up affecting the people you live with, your spouse. If you have kids, that could be a challenge too, moving them from school. So for me, I don't wish for anyone to be traded just because of how difficult it is to pick up your life and start over. Yeah, that was a huge challenge. It definitely, punched me in the face a couple of times, and I had to learn through it the hard way of how to deal with it, how to be closer with my wife to get through these situations. But yeah, it is part of it, but it doesn't make it easy. And there's a sense of maybe rejection sometimes that comes in with getting traded, or just moving in general is tough. And I think, anyone who doesn't play sports can understand moving in general is always hard. So imagine picking up your life, and within 24 hours you need to be in a new market, you need to be performing again. There's no 2-week grace period where you can kind of get your stuff together, get your life together. You're in a hotel, your family's probably not there, you're trying to figure out new places to live, all while still having to perform because you're getting paid, and you have to go out weekend and week out and play well. Pressure from fans, pressure from the club. Again, responsibilities of an athlete, but these are definitely things that can weigh on players.
And with all these personal experiences that you've had with all the trades, the pressure to perform, you've played in a World Cup. I know you've dealt with hatred on social media. I mean, with all of these things you've had to deal with as an athlete, what are some of the steps you've taken personally to work on mental health?
I think the biggest step I took was definitely finding comfort in my family, my loved ones. You know, when it came to the social media abuse, I had to quickly turn to the people I could trust and people that loved me and focus my energy and attention on them. You know, even playing in a World Cup, you know, you you think of it as this cushy dream that you've wanted since you were a kid, and when you get there you realize that the stakes are so high and the competition's high and the pressure's even higher. And you know, I had to hire a sports mental coach to get me through that World Cup, because I feel like if I didn't have him, I don't know where I would have been. So I had to assemble a team of people around me to make sure that mentally I was good and that every day I could deal with the challenges of being an athlete.
Have you seen the effects of that on the field? I mean, we talk about physical health, right?
Yeah.
And how a knee injury affects you on the field. But how much does being mentally healthy actually potentially affect performance on the field?
Oh, 100%. There's a direct correlation. You know, the game is played, what do they say, 95% with the mind. But if you're not in a good mental space, everything else crumbles. And you can figure out ways to hang on when you're not in a good mental space, but it's not going to be efficient, and it's going to end up being detrimental to your career. So for me, I think now I have a clearer headspace on certain things. I'm able to assess situations, address them, and have action plans for them. And then because of the team I have around me, I can always, you know, unpack all this stuff in a good way where the next day I've left it behind and it doesn't affect me too much. So I've definitely matured as an individual and as a player, and that's through the mental resilience I've gained from, you know, working with a sports mental coach.
And you've been able to take a lot of these steps on your own, but there are probably a ton of guys out there who need some of that guidance, and maybe that comes from their club or the league. What are some of the steps you think maybe that clubs, leagues can take in this space?
I think, you know, obviously being on the executive board for the PA, I think that's a huge point for the PA to take a lead in, just because there's a level of trust that's needed when these people are employed for players. Sometimes players can believe that, you know, these people will go and talk to the clubs and talk to the coaches, and that can end up creating this level of distrust where people don't want to open up and be as vulnerable as they need to. There are definitely a lot of companies out there that are not affiliated with any leagues and work with high level athletes in different sports. So I think that's definitely something that, you know, if a club is going to go out and try and get for their players, they need to understand that there has to be a level of security around the players' vulnerability, and it can't be something that's constantly tracked and looked into. But there's definitely resources out there, and it's just whether or not people are going to see that as a competitive edge. I think, you know, whenever there's something new in the market and teams or clubs, sporting organizations see it as a way to get ahead of their competition, they embrace it and take it on right away. And I think because of the stigma around mental health, there's still a little bit of this, I don't know if we're going to do it yet. So maybe we need I'm sure Man City does it, but we need more top clubs to do it, where then the other clubs will just follow in their footsteps, and then that will benefit the entire player pool in the world. Yeah.
You mentioned the stigma. It's always been there, and it is still there, largely because of the machismo around athletics and the machismo around, you know, men, all that. So do you feel like, at least over the course of the past few years, like that stigma is being chipped away? Are you feeling some sort of gradual movement?
I am definitely. I think the players, the guys that are in situations now that are using these resources to benefit their careers need to be spokespeople for this movement, and that's a responsibility like I need to continue to take on. It's a challenge because I have friends that, you know, things could be going difficult for them at home, and, you know, it's not going well on the field, and, you know, I'll be like, hey, like maybe you need to, like, you know, go to therapy or see a mental coach. And there's that feeling of weakness when you have to accept that you need help. And for me, I think it's a sign of strength, but that initial period is a little bit scary. So I think for, like, as a person who's doing it myself and everyone else who's doing it, it's our responsibility to motivate guys to step out of their comfort zone and really get after it. But it's there, and it's helpful. It's not going to make you worse. But again, it's this thing of feeling weak, and, athletes, we're supposed to be strong, and we're supposed to go out there and we're supposed to fight and play and win and not complain about anything. So I understand what they're dealing with, but we definitely have to kind of break that barrier right now.
I know you've had a ton of these conversations, and is the hope maybe that other athletes see this, maybe guys in your own locker room see this and say, you know what, Mac's having this conversation, maybe it's okay for me.
I hope so, and I'm very open, and it's tough because you don't want to pry into people's lives and force things upon them. Like, no one forced therapy upon me, no one forced hiring a mental coach. It was more of myself looking at what I can do to get better, So, but I'm here as a resource, and I can be vulnerable with people. But again, it's finding that balance of creating a safe space, but not overdoing it and making someone feel like they're being pressured to do something. But yeah, I hope people watch this and find confidence that there's strength in doing things that are uncomfortable, and understanding that there's a real benefit to this.
Well, Mac, thank you so much for the time. Thanks for having this conversation, and hopefully it leads to more and more of these conversations in the future.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Jeff.